Hello and welcome to another edition of Backyard Beers and Football. I am your host, co-host Coast Shane, and I am joined by three brand new members to the BYB family, or at least for tonight in some cases. We have Sean and Andrew, both from the new CTP pod. Sean, how are you?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm excited not really excited to talk about what Howie did to us in the last 3 days, but I'm ready to air some grievances.
Nice Seinfeld quote. Well done. Andrew, how are you, man?
I'm doing pretty good. I think I'm very excited to do this first show, and I think we're going to have a lot of interesting takes and a couple different opinions on certain picks. I think it's going to be fun.
And then we have joining us for tonight in a guest spot, maybe full-time. We have no idea yet, but we have Kelly Greenhour's LJ Harrell. LJ is like my brother, and if you guys don't listen to Kelly Greenhour, you guys are doing everything wrong. I shouldn't be supporting other podcasts as openly as I do, but they're great. Give them a listen. El, how are you?
Hey guys, what's going on? I'm glad to be on. I'm glad we had some real sports to actually live sports, if you want to call it, to watch the last 3 days. And we're definitely, as was mentioned, we're definitely going to have some different opinions on what happened over the week, over the draft.
That we definitely will, and LJ's microphone quality is the complete polar opposite to his football knowledge. We are recording this one in separate rooms of the house right now, and it's taken a toll on his audio output, but nevertheless, we're really excited to have him on. So, El, thanks again for joining us, man.
No problem. I'm excited.
So, we're going to roll right into it. The Eagles had a draft. Howie Roseman is kind of a smacked ass. I don't particularly understand how things line up and how the evaluation of what he saw in some of his picks. Nothing lines up the way that it should in our minds. And now we've had to go through Twitter, we've gone through sports radio and other podcasts, and we've all listened and we've dissected these 3 days of picks, these 10, 11, 12 picks, however many the Eagles took in this draft here. And we're now sitting here doing the thing that we do every year, trying to make sense of it all. We're trying to sit there and see, well, you know what, I guess I can see Jalen Hurts as a Taysom Hill. I guess I can, this will work. I can understand why you wouldn't want to trade the first round pick and second round pick that was ultimately Rigger and Hurts to get CeeDee Lamb. And it's not that big of a deal that he's in Dallas. And we're trying to convince ourselves as to all these different particular reasons why. But let's start this thing off here in the first round. We start seeing our guy, CeeDee Lamb, slip. The way this thing is going doesn't make any sense. And now here we are, and we have multiple trade opportunities. LJ, I'm going to start with you. Scared the shit out of me with a false report on Twitter.
Yeah, I fell for
it. L fell for a faulty tweet. First of all, you're an asshole. I was containing my excitement in that moment, but I was basically shitting myself. What did you make of the Eagles' evaluation of what they wanted out of a wide receiver, and what do you have as to why they would not have made that particular move to go up and get CeeDee?
Well, it does take two to tango, and they put themselves in this position because throughout free agency they didn't sign a receiver. They didn't upgrade the offense. So coming into the draft, every team knew that the Eagles were going to look for a receiver. So going to 16 or trying to go to 16 to trade with Atlanta, Atlanta's going to hold you over a barrel. So you put that on yourself. And while Howie does deserve blame, he can't force the Atlanta Falcons to trade with him. He can't force the Denver Broncos to trade with him, the Niners to trade with him. It takes two to tango. So they put themselves in the position. All our expectations were, look, they're going to try to get one of the top three receivers, and they didn't do that. And the one thing that they did do with this draft, and I'll talk about it later, but in totality, they wanted to add speed, and they did that. If you look at it, they added a lot of speed, which if you look at last year's roster, it was Deshaun Jackson and then maybe Miles Sanders, and that's it. Once Deshaun got hurt, the offense, the receivers couldn't run. They had no speed. So the one thing that they did do, that they did address was speed. Now, obviously, we'll find out down the road, can these guys actually play? We don't know that right now, but they can run, and that's a good start to the offseason, or to this offense that we're hoping to see in training camp, if there is a training camp, and preseason. But my initial take was, look, Howie tried, but Atlanta wanted that second-round pick, And obviously, hindsight being 2020, we didn't know who the second round pick was going to be. So they found it important to keep it. So I understand it, but you can't really blame Howie that the Atlanta Falcons didn't want to trade with him. They didn't want to help a conference rival by being like, all right, well, just give us a third, give us a fourth, and the first, and we'll be fine. So that's my thing, is Howie tried to move up, and our expectations as CeeDee Lamb was falling were like, oh my God, he might get to us. But again, it takes two teams have to be able to come to an agreement, and he just wasn't able to do it.
So Andrew, you had mentioned in our CTP group chat, you had kind of tweeted out that you thought that the reaction ended up being worse about this pick and potentially some of the following picks had CD not gone to the Cowboys. Now, we obviously stuck to the Cowboys a few years ago to, jumping up a spot, taking Dallas Goedert. We had Zach Ertz at the time. Difference is you do play with two tight ends. And last year, our entire offense was that personnel. This is different. This CeeDee Lamb is, and LJ and I have talked about this a lot, just like hanging around the house. But CeeDee Lamb is legitimately the wow receiver out of this draft. The other guys, they're interesting. But he was the guy, and he's going to Dallas. Do you truly think that had he landed anywhere else, the reaction wouldn't have been so visceral?
Yeah, I really think that if CeeDee Lamb, say, went to the Broncos, I think the reaction would have been different in Philly, just because I think people would have been more understanding of not trading up, because I think people would have believed more it takes two to tango and stuff like that, just because, okay, well, he went before us, but he didn't go to a rival and won't be facing him twice a year. I think the fact that he lands in Dallas, everyone is frustrated because it wasn't a Dallas need, because I think everyone would agree that the secondary would have been better fit for Dallas after what they lost in the offseason. It was more of a pick to get back at Eagles fans, and obviously it's more than that because CeeDee Lamb is that good. It's not that the trio they have at receiver just becomes that much better. And I think I truly believe that if CeeDee Lamb would have went somewhere else, the reaction would have been different. It wouldn't have given people time to kind of get fired up beforehand, and I think it would even help the Jalen Reagor and the confidence in that pick to be a little better as well.
Sean, you were kind of working through this one too, and you were texting back and forth. And this is the first year that I'm talking football with you, and the first year that we've really gotten to know each other. As you're going through and you're watching this draft, and you're seeing pick 11, pick 12, pick 13 come up, and we're nearing these places where, all right, these are some of the teams that Howie might be able to work a trade with. What's your kind of reaction as you're going through this thing as CD keeps falling? You see a receiver go ahead of him that Ruggs didn't really have any business doing so. What's your emotional state like as you're starting to see that receiver, your guy, drop?
So I will say, once it started to get towards, I believe Ruggs went to the Raiders, right, at 12?
Yeah.
So obviously when the Raiders come up, they're taking a wide receiver. I mean, every single mock draft in the world had them taking a wide receiver. And they said Ruggs, and that made me excited because I knew that the top two were still there. And I said, this is prime position. The 49ers had been talking about trading back for so long. And I said, this is exactly where Howie needs to be. And I didn't take my eyes off of their name at the bottom left, just watching the time tick down. That was the longest, 10 minutes of my entire life. And I'm going to say the happiest moment of that entire night for me was when the Broncos came up at 15. And they took Judy over Lamb. And I'm not going to lie, I was jumping up and down. I was looking at that Falcons pick like, this is the pick. This is it. This is where it's going to happen. And then they kept it. And all I could think of was there's no reason why Howie didn't go get that pick. And obviously, like everybody said so far, it takes two to tango. But they made that pick, and then I saw Dallas was up. And I just thought to myself, my heart kind of sunk. And I was like, we really just let Dallas get this guy. And I was like, no, there hasn't been a single mock draft where the Cowboys ended up taking a wide receiver. And I think that was because, the top three should have been gone by the time they got their pick. Every single mock draft this year had the Cowboys taken a safety or a cornerback or, maybe a defensive end. And then you see Jerry Jones pop up on the screen, and his smug little face, he's cackling to himself. You can see it in his face. And the second he popped up and I saw him cracking up, calling Mike McCarthy, that's the... Yeah, okay. I saw those two talking on the phone. They were both laughing. I just looked at my mom and said, Mom, I'm gonna lose it. Because I knew they did it. Right then and there, they didn't have to announce it. I knew they picked him.
Yeah, that was absolutely brutal. And you're right. Staring at that clock, and especially after LJ's assholiness sat there and told me a trade that didn't go through.
Well, can I say one thing, though, about Dallas taking CeeDee Lamb? Yeah, they took CeeDee Lamb, but if you remember last year, Dak threw for over 5,000 yards. He had, a top 3 offense they had a top 3 offense in the NFL, and they still lost to the Eagles, who had practice squad players. So you got to include in coaching and all this. Mike McCarthy is just a heavier version of Jason Garrett. He had Aaron Rodgers. He had Aaron Rodgers for how long, and they won 1 Super Bowl, and he could do nothing really, significant with Rodgers besides that 1 Super Bowl. It comes down to coaching, and I will take Doug Peterson as frustrating as his play calling may get, and it could have been because he just didn't have the players last year. But as frustrating as it got at times last year with watching the offense play, besides not having anybody, I will take Doug Peterson's play calling and what he can do with any type of offensive players. Now you add Marquise Goodwin with Rager, with Hightower if they're going to make the team, and a healthy Deshaun, and with Miles Sanders in his second year and the 2 tight ends. I will take him over what Mike McCarthy can do. And plus, our defense is going to be better than Dallas's defense. So while Dallas may look like the superior team on paper and offensively, and they were last year, they still didn't win the division. The Eagles won the division. So I'm not too concerned about, Dallas has all this high hype and all this firepower, but they still got to go out on the field and play. You don't play football on paper. You don't play sports on paper. So while Dallas is going to look like a top 4 team in the NFC next year, I'm not worried until you play the game on the field.
So that's a good point, because last year we entered the season and we had, one of the highest rated offensive lines, one of the highest rated defensive lines, one of the highest rated tight end packages, wide receivers packages. Carson Wentz is obviously Carson Wentz. We struggled all year. Obviously injuries happen, things happen. Doug was, in my opinion, brutal last year. It was not fun to watch an Eagles football team that should have been exceptionally fun to watch. I very much so disagree with you about your evaluation of McCarthy. While I don't think he's great and I don't think he's better than Doug, I do think he is worlds better than Garrett. And he's going to have more weapons on both sides of the ball than what he had in Green Bay.
I think the Green Bay defense was better, honestly.
I don't particularly. I don't think that the money's going to be there long term.
I don't think this Dallas defense is going to be. They lost two starters, 3 starters in their secondary. DeMarcus Lawrence is making over $100 million. He didn't do crap last year, pretty much. He finally got his first sack against Lane Johnson. It took him all of 4 or 5 years to do that. Who knows? Who knows if Vander Esch is going to be healthy, because he has that neck injury. Look, their defense is going to be all right, but while they're going to be able to score points, they're still going to have to stop people. And I that's where I give the Eagles, because of familiarity, because of what you're going to go through this offseason with, who knows if you're going to have a training camp. The Eagles have the same offense in place, the same defense in place. They just have to incorporate new players. They have familiarity, continuity. You have a brand new coaching staff in Dallas, in Washington, in New York. And I think that's really going to make a difference, especially this year with what's going on.
Well, we have new pieces too, and you just said that we have to incorporate new people.
Yeah, but it's easier to incorporate. It's easier to incorporate new, like a player here and a player there, than an entire scheme. They're incorporating entirely new schemes. Dallas might be going from a 4-3 to a 3-4, because I'm not 100% sure if that's what McCarthy runs, because that's what he did in Green Bay. But you're incorporating brand new schemes, and that could,
we've seen how that works.
That could be a challenge. That could be a challenge in the first 4, 5, 6 weeks of the season without having a full off season.
So let's move into as we're talking about incorporating all these different challenges and the way that this team is constructed and the message that we were sending fans, we were sending that locker room. When you go out there and you trade, was it a 3rd and a 5th that we ended up trading for Slay?
Yes.
Yeah.
So a 3rd and a 5th that we ended up trading for a 29-year-old Darius Slay. We finally get a cornerback that we should be able, in theory, to trust on the outside and just shut down one half of the field. And then we sit here and we're developers for a quarterback, and we preached this. We need to build around Carson. We need to get him weapons, and we use a pick at 53 on a quarterback who, for better or for worse, I genuinely believe he's going to have the best career of any of the quarterbacks drafted. But shit, it doesn't make sense here in Philadelphia. What do you guys kind of make of what Howie, this conflicting message that Howie's kind of sent, both his locker room, his $100 million quarterback, and the fans here, by saying we're going to develop guys at a second round instead of, go out there and acquire. I mean, take the Broncos, for example, their first 2-round picks. I mean, I think it was Barchard who tweeted out, like, the rest of that offense doesn't even need to be that good over there. It's fucking different here in Philadelphia. What do you guys kind of take? And I'm going to start with Andrew on this one, about the message that Howie's kind of sending everyone. Are we competing for a Super Bowl this year, or are we developing talent?
I think it's honestly almost a scared message. I think because I think it just shows how concerned he is about Wentz's health. And I mean, I know the question came up in my house, like, does this mean Wentz's injury last year, like his concussion, maybe it's bothering him more than even we thought, or maybe the ACL is still up there and bothering him? And it just creates a confusing, scared message to me, at least. And I think it's, like you said, the Broncos go out and get 2 receivers, and like there was still Denzel Mims from Baylor out there, or a linebacker, which was another big need. But am I going to sit here and say it's like a development year? No, I think it'd still be a contention year, just because of the other pieces we do have on the roster already is already there. So I think it's going to be still a positive year. I just think it's a confusing, scary message to me. And something that still hits me about it is, if you're going to take a quarterback there, I don't know why they were so concerned about giving up that second round pick. Because I would have much rather CeeDee Lamb than Jalen Reagor and Jalen Hurts.
That's a thing that's been floating around Twitter constantly. So, Sean, I'm curious to get your take on this. CeeDee Lamb was your guy, from the start, and it was most of the city's guy. This is what we wanted if there was a way to make this happen, and he was the apple of Howie's eye and all this other shit. Taking a look at it now, not knowing the status of Carson Wentz and not knowing how the organization truly feels about him over the long term, what are you taking? Are you taking a CeeDee Lamb, or are you, and again, this is an unconfirmed package or deal, his unwillingness to move up, who knows if just pick 1 and pick 2 was going to do it, and what else was going to be thrown in there. Maybe the price, maybe they truly did have us over the barrel, as LJ said. But what would you rather, Sean? What would you rather have here? Would you rather have our first 2-round picks this year in the 2 Jalen's and Reagor and Hurts, or would you rather move them plus whatever and walk out of this with CeeDee Lamb?
I mean, to me, this is easy. I texted you guys the morning of the first round saying, like, happy CeeDee Lamb day to you guys. Like, I was all in on him. And looking at it now, I mean, obviously, I would have absolutely traded the first and second, especially seeing what Howie ended up doing. But, it's a lot easier to say in hindsight, because if you end up pulling off that trade and you see all of a sudden the Eagles are in that slot at 16, and you see now, we're getting CeeDee Lamb, you know exactly what Howie's doing, you know why he traded up to get that pick. You're saying, all right, what did we give up? Did we give up a second next year? Did we give up, a first and a third this year? What did we give up to move up, 5 spots? And you end up seeing that it's a first and the second round pick from this year, and now you don't have a pick until 103. Then half the fan base is angry anyway, because now you get one guy and now you have no depth. You end up with 5 or 6 picks instead of what we ended up with at 10. So, I mean, in hindsight, it's easy to say, why didn't we do that? You ended up taking a quarterback, which we didn't need. But, I obviously would have done it at the time. Looking at it now, it's a lot easier to say than it happening and saying we don't have another pick until 103.
We had, was it 3 4th-round picks?
Yes.
Going into that?
Yeah. Original one, and then the 2 comp picks.
Right. If we wanted to get up and move up again, we did have the assets to do so. We had player assets as well. We had Rasul, who, 2 weeks ago, assumingly, I mean, if you follow his Twitter and Instagram, I felt like he knew he was traded or gone.
That was a song lyric, by the way.
What's up?
It was a song lyric. I know what you're talking about. There's something
What
about
I
Garcia.
said or what he said?
No, what he said on Twitter or Instagram.
Not
Whatever.
subliminal messaging, man. No.
It's a song lyric.
He knows he's going. He knows he's going. But the point is, we had assets. If we wanted to move up and get back up into that third round, get into those the late 80s, early 90s, whatever they wanted and saw there in terms of their evaluation board, then we had the assets to do so. So it is frustrating to sit there and see, hey, we're coming away without CD, and we're coming away with what it was so important to hold on to that second round pick to take a developmental guy or a potential gadget kind of a piece if we do end up going that Taysom Hill route. And it's hard to justify this pick. It's still hard. These 3 days later, or 2 days later after taking it, it's still hard to digest, and it's hard to defend. I'm going to go to Alfred. Go ahead.
I'll justify it. We won a Super Bowl with a backup quarterback, right? And I'm not saying that Jalen Hurts is going to turn into Nick Foles, but we've
be
had
better
it.
Than Nick Foles.
I think he's going to be better than Taysom Hill too. Like Taysom Hill last year had less than 400 yards of total offense, and the Saints signed him to a $16.3 million, gave him a 1 year, $16.3 million extension. And that's for being a gadget player, and he doesn't. And then they signed Jameis Winston to be the true backup quarterback. So they don't really have faith in Taysom Hill to be a quarterback. Jalen Hurts, you saw what he did at Bama. He wins games. Yes, he got replaced by Tua, but Tua was really good. And he ended up replacing Tua after he got hurt in the SEC championship game 2 years ago, winning that and helping Bama to get to the college football playoffs. So we know he's been in this situation before, and I'm not saying that Carson Wentz is an injury-prone quarterback. Last year's injury, he went through the entire year. His injury was a fluke thing because of the cheap shot by Jadeveon Clowney. But tell me this: if we had Jalen Hurts, a Jalen Hurts type quarterback instead of Josh McCown, do we beat Seattle in the playoffs last year?
If he doesn't tear his hamstring, we beat Seattle.
Maybe he was scared. He was scared to throw the football. They had a fourth down and he got sacked. He didn't even give his receivers a chance to make a play. He was scared, legitimately scared to throw the football in the playoff game against Seattle. And maybe that was his injury. Who knows? But Jalen Hurts is the type of guy that he's going to allow his receiver. I think he'll go out there. What he learned under Lincoln Riley, he's going to allow his receivers to try to make a play. He'll throw the ball up, and you have the type of receivers that can get separation now. You have Alshon still, who he might not play till midway through the year, but everybody calls him a quote-unquote 50-50 receiver, while that's not Carson's strength. I mean, maybe that Jalen will be more comfortable with doing that. And I'm not saying that, again, I'm not saying Jalen's coming in here to be a starter. He's coming in here to be the backup. Would you rather have Jalen Hurts or Nate Sudfeld? We don't even know if Nate's what the Eagles feel in Nate Sudfeld.
Nate Sudfeld thinks he's a starter.
Yeah, I know. This is going to be his last. This is going to be his last year here.
His last training camp here, and then he's gone.
You don't think he's going to last through get to the season? No.
I don't.
We'll see. But I'm just saying, you have to. You don't. It's tough because you don't draft a contingency plan in the second round.
Exactly.
But if they have. But my thing, look, if you look at the totality of the draft and you look without the pick number next to it, if you look at the draft, they got speed, they got secondary help, they got some linemen, they got a couple linebackers. You
can't do it that way. You can't look at it that way. You have to protect the value as to when these guys were taken and what was still on the board. It's easy to sit there and say we've acquired the needs that we entered into this draft with. It is easy, but if you reach multiple times or it doesn't work, because then you do have to sit there and think, what if? And we just invested $100 million into Carson Wentz, believing that he is the guy, and we go with a second round pick. Now, I believe wholeheartedly that Doug's absolute best quality as a coach is I believe he is a psychologist of what it means to groom young men into athletes, into superstars, and he keeps them grounded and he gets them to believing in a message. This is another obstacle that didn't need to fucking be here. We had all the troubles that we had with Nick Foles here, and do you move Carson, which was a still moronic thought. Anyone who had that is just absurd. But it was still there, and Carson still had to deal with that, and Doug still had to navigate those waters. And then now you put this problem in the locker room that didn't need to be here. If we take and look, had he fallen to the third or fourth round, I'd have been looking at it like, well, fuck you. Someone needs to take this man because he's entirely too good to keep slipping. But we didn't. We used 53, and I think it was Andrew that had mentioned, Mims was still right there. We had another guy that Hamler, whom I'm not high on, but was still there, I believe.
No, I think he was taken by Denver.
Was he
before.
taken to? Yeah, you're right.
But so are you saying that Jalen Hurts is somebody that can come in and take the job from Carson Wentz? Because that's what it sounds like you're saying. I don't think it is. I think Jalen Hurts isn't. If he is going to be the starter of this team, he's not going to be the starter of this team for another 3, 4, 5 years. Like, this is Carson Wentz's team.
This isn't me saying this. This is what that pick says.
I don't see it as that. That's just me. I don't see it as how he's saying, Jalen could come in here and start. No, they just think Jalen can come in here and improve the team.
To me, you got to let your guy breathe. You need to let him groom, and you need to give him the pieces to do so. Sean, where are you at with this kind of stuff? Is this something for you that you're concerned with the locker room and the chemistry and the message that has been delivered to those guys in that eventual 53 man? Are you concerned that Doug Peterson's going to have to navigate another quarterback? It's not a controversy yet, but it's a weird thing. We got to acknowledge it's a weird fucking thing. Where are you at with it?
Well, you heard what Howie said. We're trying to create a quarterback factory here.
And I think
if Jalen Hurts proves himself as the backup, we can trade him for a second round pick.
And move up 5-6 spots?
Dude, we traded AJ Thiele, who we drafted in the 5th, 6th, 7th round, for a second round pick. Like, if this works out, you will be able to trade Jalen Hurts down the road and get something for it.
But if it works out and you're moving him, that means ironic. He played a lot.
It's almost ironic that you took this guy in the second, what a lot of people thought was a reach for a team that didn't technically need a quarterback in the second round. And people are saying, what are you going to trade him for in the future? A second round pick? Like, what, you're getting back the same thing you spent on him. But I think best case scenario in drafting Jalen Hurts, obviously if something were to happen to Carson, that's best case scenario. But I think you get a situation like you do with Bradford, where all of a sudden a quarterback goes down and they're willing to overpay for a guy that has starting caliber numbers. And I think,
but you're talking about that was a fucking moronic move too, but you're talking about a former number 1 overall pick who had played some games.
Right.
In order for him to accumulate any type of true asset value to move, he's going to have to play. He's going to have to play a lot, and he's going to have to play well. And if he does,
not necessarily.
What are you doing now?
Carson Wentz isn't going to see the field in preseason. It's going to be Jalen Hurts in the preseason. He can build himself up. He can, work on his mechanics in the preseason, and teams can see that he's improving. I think it would be on a
preseason thing.
I think it would be more of a controversy if they were to bring in a Jameis Winston, Cam Newton, somebody like that to back up Carson, because Carson makes one bad throw, an interception. People are going to be calling because you have quarterbacks that have had semi-success. I mean, you have Cam Newton, a former MVP.
Cam Newton stinks, and Jameis eats his own fingers that are formed into a W shape. No one's scared of either of them.
Well,
I'm just telling you, they have more experience in the league to where they've proven that they can be starters. That's more of a controversy or more pressure on Carson than it is bringing in a rookie quarterback.
Go ahead, Andrew. I think it was you that were jumping in.
But see, that's what I'm going to counter that, and I think that's one of my biggest issues with the Jalen Hurts pick is personally, I'd rather either trade that pick like we mentioned before or take a more need there, because if I'm the Eagles, I would rather Jameis Winston or Cam Newton or even Joe Flacco to be the backup quarterback for Wentz, just because if say Wentz does play the whole season and then he gets hurt the first round of the playoffs, I'd rather Winston jump in there or Cam Newton jump in there or Joe Flacco, just because of the experience they have and they've done it before. That I'd rather them jump in over a rookie who's never seen the field before in a Jalen.
What I would rather? I would rather try to convince Matt Moore to unretire for a third time than any of the names that we just mentioned.
I trust Cam out of all those names. I think Cam's been there. He didn't perform on the biggest stage, but he's been there.
He stinks.
If we're talking backup quarterbacks.
I'm not saying they're good. I'm not going to put him over Wentz, but as a backup quarterback, I gladly take that.
We're also talking about a team that is going to be up against the salary cap next year. And
for sure.
So, and Carson's contract jumps this year, it's 18, and after next year, it's up to like $34 million. So if you can have a cheap quarterback room, but also have quarterbacks that could go out there, and if you need them to start a week or two or three, they're able to. And I think, Jalen will be able to do that over time. I'm not saying it's going to be an immediate thing, but if Jalen has to be put onto the field, say week 10, week 11, week 12, I think that by that time, we'll have confidence in it. But he's also not going to go out there and, take Carson. Everybody knows this is Carson's job. Nobody's going to be calling for Jalen Hurts to take over for Carson Wentz week 8 of this season.
I don't know that it's Carson's job. I don't know that the locker room, if it's 96%, sure, but there's 4% of uncertainty there. There has to be some level of concern and doubt. And again, we've talked about the durability of him. To me, in theory, this should be his team, but some of the decisions that have been made just show a different message. It's hard to ignore. It's hard to defend. And I think it's really easy to be concerned about how this organization clearly views Carson and the longevity of his contract and his ability to compete at a high level or be on the field at all for this Philadelphia Eagles football team. It's just tough.
And Shane, you mentioned it. What message does it send to the locker room? Well, what message does it send to Wentz and to look around the league and see the Cowboys give Cooper that contract this offseason and then draft the CeeDee Lamb. See the Raiders give Carr, three receivers in their first 4 picks. See the Broncos go out there and get a receiver in their first 2 picks, and then you're not willing to move up for Lamb, which again is understandable to a degree. And then instead of getting help in any free agency move, or you get one receiver in the first 4 rounds, first 4 rounds of the draft, and then you take obviously the back end, and then the trade for Goodwin, which I do like, but again, that's another injury kind of prone player, so who knows if he can stay healthy. So it's like, what kind of message are you sending Wentz? Not only could your job be in question in drafting this pick, but you're not even going out there trying to give him as much help as you should have. Yeah,
and we've talked about it before. Kelly Greenhour's talked about it on a handful of episodes at times. You saw an Aaron Rodgers try to carry just a dump truck of talent out there. We saw, I hate the guy, but we saw Donovan McNabb get dog shit talent thrown out there until his 1.5 years with T.O. and then the back end of his time here in Philadelphia. And you said, let's just see if it works. It's fucking wrong for all the reasons Andrew just said. You see all these other teams saying, you know what? I know how good our quarterback is. I'm not going to make him do it alone. I'm going to pad him with as much talent that maximizes. Okay. Go ahead.
Again, hindsight being 2020, but Michael Thomas was a 2nd or 3rd round pick. Justin Blackmon was a top 5 pick, and he lasted a year or 2 in the NFL.
Yo, so
you
don't talk about him.
You don't know that as much as I'm a Bama fan, so I love Jerry Jeudy, I love Henry Ruggs, I like CeeDee Lamb, so I would have liked to see the Eagles pick, but we don't know that they're going to turn into superstars. Obviously, the potential is there. We know that if they follow the track that everybody expects, they're going to be Pro Bowl players. But you can also pick players in the 2nd, 3rd, 4th round that are going to turn into stars. Again, like Michael Thomas was a 2nd or 3rd round pick, and he's the best receiver in football right now. So, you can't obviously. We don't know what Jalen Reagor is going to be.
Got a high ass voice. It's weird as shit.
Shut up.
Well, I'm just saying.
Why don't you buy me a computer then? No,
not you, asshat. Michael Thomas has a high voice. Damn.
I thought you were talking about me. Shut up. But seriously.
But I mean, hey, if the shoe fits, kid.
Shut up. But seriously, it's so hard to grade a draft a day after it happened. We can barely grade last year's. We think Miles Sanders is going to be a really good running back. But who knows if he hits a wall this year and something happens to where his game drops. Andre Dillard, we have so many question marks about him. So it's just really tough. Jamarcus Russell was the number 1 overall pick. What did everybody think about him? He was a bust. Ryan Leaf was a bust, and they were all number 1 picks. So it's so hard to judge. And obviously we all want to because we're fans, and the Eagles didn't do what we thought they were going to do, or what we thought they should do. But it's just tough, and that's why I'm after that first 2 rounds where I was a little Matt, I slept on it and I'm even keel right now because I just want to see how it plays out.
I think it's fair, and I think this is a city of overreaction. Always, we are truly a hyperbole of every emotion that goes through. But we've talked a lot about, and again, we can't judge anything, but at this point, we've talked a lot about the first two picks in Rieger and Hertz, right? We do still have to show some love to the remainder of the guys that ended up getting drafted. I jokingly had said in the intro here that, how we had a good third day for the first time and who knows how long. We had question marks scattered throughout that. But if you do take a look, and while I disagree with this logic because I believe there are value to the picks there, and I think that they were misvalued at the times that they were taken, if you do take a look at the big picture here and what we entered in terms of needs into this draft, we did fill a lot of those needs. So let's talk about some of the other guys that were taken here. I'm going to start with Andrew. Outside of those first two picks there, outside of Rieger, outside of Hertz, who are you most interested in at this point that went through that draft process with the Philadelphia Eagles?
I'm going to say Kayvon Wallace. I'm a huge fan of his. I think he's honestly the best pick out of the entire draft for the Eagles. I think he's going to come in and he can make an impact right away. He's been on a team of winning through Clemson. He's been through the college playoff system. He's been through a lot of competition in terms of who he's faced. He was a captain of their defense, so he can come in and kind of help lead this defense. Now, I'm not going to say he's going to be a Malcolm Jenkins leader right away, but I think eventually he could be that big leader of the defense. And I think this was a tremendous fourth-round pick for the Eagles.
El, you obviously got to watch some of that too with Kayvon Wallace. What's your feel on him?
I like him a lot. Actually, in my mock draft, I actually had the Eagles taking Kayvon Wallace, and I had them taking Jack Driscoll. So I got two of my, I guess, 8 at the picks correct. But I'm a huge Kayvon Wallace fan, and I think he, like it was just said, he's going to come in, he's going to help on special teams right away. But he's also going to have a chance to learn behind somebody like a Will Parks, because Will Parks is somebody that's going to play all over the field for the Eagles, and that's kind of the role that Kayvon Wallace is going to play. It's going to be like the Malcolm Jenkins type of role. He's going to be able to cover tight ends. He's going to be able to cover backs out the field. He's going to be able to cover slot receivers. And following him on, he is awesome on Twitter, by the way. Like if you haven't followed him, follow him. He loves that he's coming to Philly. Like he says that we're going to be up there right with that Clemson fan base. But yeah, I love the Kayvon Wallace pick also. But to for a different name, when they took Prince, I can't even say his name.
Prince Tega Waganogoha.
Yeah, he was projected a second to third round pick. They got him in the 6th round, I think, 5th, 6th round.
Yeah, 6th.
That if he can stay healthy, because I know he has injury concerns, he has a chance to really help out and provide depth on the offensive line. So I like that pick a lot, and he's somebody that has had such a crazy upbringing that he's not going to take this for granted. He's going to go out there. And
everyone did. Did you see that?
Yeah, I know, but like he came from Nigeria with one change of clothes and $20 in his pocket, like. I didn't like that ESPN was like with everybody. He's like his mother died or his father was in jail. Like really,
that was awful.
It was really bad.
Tragedy sells. Don't get me wrong, but these kids on the biggest of stages, man, just let their accomplishments speak for themselves.
It was like every other pick. It was
ridiculous. It was brutal. Yeah, except for white people, they were fine.
But I think Prince is it has a chance to really like if things don't work out with Dillard, which I think they will, but if they don't, maybe he can slide in over there. If he can play guard, say Kelsey retires after this year and say Amalu moves in to center, maybe Prince can go to guard. So he's going to provide a lot of depth on the offensive line.
Yeah, I am intrigued by both linemen that we ended up taking there for similar reasons. But that Kayvon Wallace pick, so I'm kind of surprised you guys are quite as high on him as you are. I kind of peg him as someone who doesn't exactly make sense in terms of anything. Like I don't think that his size or speed match up ideally to any place on that field. And again, you're going to use him as a hybrid kind of a guy. He's going to play inside. He's going to play back. He's going to play everywhere. But I'm just concerned about him being so easily exploited by a smart quarterback or a smart offensive coordinator who can sit there and say, all right, hey, his speed can't hang with this guy, or his strength and size probably can't hang with this tight end. And I'm just afraid of a guy, another kind of awkwardly sized guy for his position or position sets. I'm just super concerned how that translates at the NFL level. I don't know if you guys share any of those concerns. You believe that his talent and football IQ alone can help make up for some of those things. Awesome. They don't. That's exactly right. My concerns.
I can't speak about, football IQ, but from, the tape, from the reaction itself, from all the people that thought he was supposed to go, in the second or third round, and he hung around until the fourth, and the fact that he has that connection to Brian Dawkins, who obviously is so big for the Philadelphia fan base, I think it's a good pick.
Yeah, well, we have success from Clemson. That's fair.
Except CJ Gaddis.
All right, Sean, so you didn't give us one of yours. Each of the other guys gave us someone that they were pretty excited about. Anyone in particular that we did or did not talk about that you're super excited about?
I wouldn't call it excited, but I am intrigued by the speed at wide receiver we got. I don't even want to bring up the linebackers that we picked up because it seems like all three are just major question marks, and I think Howie was just kind of trying to pick as many as possible, so maybe one of them will work out. But I'm excited to see, obviously I think Rager is going to step in and be a starter from day one, but I'm excited to see how Hightower and Watkins turn out. I'm praying they don't end up like a, Shelton Gibson type wide receiver. Jesus. But I hope they pan out. That's about all I can say about him.
Did you hear the comp for Quez Watkins? Did you hear who it was?
No.
Todd Pinkston.
Yeah, I saw that. I remember that.
Awesome.
I saw that and I was like, oh Lord. But he did run the second fastest 40 for receivers. He was like a 4.2.
He did 4.22.
Like 4.29, 4.3, something like that.
It was 4.35 for Quez Watkins.
Yeah, so he again, the one thing that they wanted to address this offseason, especially for the receivers, was speed, and they added a ton of it. Again, we got to find out if they can play, but they definitely got faster.
They did. Go ahead.
And that's the thing I do like that they did do is they did build a team of speed, and it's something that it seems like to me they're trying to build off of kind of how the Chiefs built their team, and they see the success the Chiefs have had with a bunch of speed type receivers and stuff. Like, no, I'm not going to say I know he's not going to be as good as Tyreek Hill, but I think that's kind of the way Jalen Reagor's game is kind of built around the same type of style. He could come in and be a punt returner as well. I think that's something the Eagles did was kind of build the way the Chiefs did. I know Doug Peterson used to coach with the Chiefs, so it seems like they kind of almost tried to mirror that type of build the roster. And same with another name I kind of like. He went undrafted, one of the undrafted signing players with a lot of speed is Adrian Killins, the running back. I think his speed can be big time too as well from the backfield.
The UFC guy, yeah. The only thing about him, he's like 5'7", so his size might be, but he has a chance. I mean, you put him back there as a punt returner, kick returner, it gives him speed. So I do agree with that when it comes to undrafted guys.
Well, imitation is the highest form of flattery, and we have done so much wrong. We are so behind the curve. We are so slow. It is encouraging.
Yeah, we still won the division.
Misevaluated. Still encouraging that they have moved in a direction of speed. And Andrew, to go along with that, if they want to copy an offense, please, I have so much fun watching the Kansas City Chiefs. I loathe watching the Philadelphia Eagles offense, at least of the last year and a half. But
we could be the Jets. That could be worse.
Hey, at least we're at the Packers draft. Like I don't know how they went the entire draft without a wide receiver.
One of the biggest wide receivers.
I wanted to talk about that later. Yeah,
that was going to be my team that lost the draft.
Exactly.
Well, we'll get into some of those other topics in a bit. We are called Backyard Beers and Football, and because we're out of the swing of things, I completely forgot to acknowledge the beers that the guys are drinking here on this show. So if you have not yet already cracked open a beer as a listener, you should probably crack open one now or additional beers. Sean, what are you going with today?
Unless you're driving, of course.
Okay, it's not the 60s and 70s, but thanks for the...
So I am currently, and I mentioned this when we were texting about preparing for the show. I picked today, of all days, to head back up to school to pack up the rest of my things that I had at my schoolhouse. And then I get a text. Well, Shane texts our group chat and says, "Is anybody ready to go now?" And it was as I was walking into the house. And I said, well, it's a good thing I brought my laptop because I was prepared to pack up and head right back home and, ready to record tonight. So since I've been home, I've been kind of sharing beers with my mom, whatever she kind of picks out. And it's usually been Bud Light or, maybe I'll pick up a craft beer or something. But it's usually Bud Light because that's the easiest thing I can drink. It's the easiest to go down. I can crack like 5 or 6 every 2 hours. It just goes down smooth. But while I'm at school, and I'm lucky I had 2 of these left in the fridge, I go for the cheapest quality beer I can find, and that
Very
is
college.
that
Let me
is
guess,
a
Natty
nice
Light.
ice cold Hams.
Oh my God.
So that is what I've had. It's actually a tall boy, and it's almost gone now that we've been talking about Howie Roseman for the past 50 minutes.
That's fair. Andrew, what do you got over there, sir?
I'm just gonna go with a traditional Philadelphia beer, Yingling.
Sticking with the Yingling. He's always a Yingling guy. LJ
always-
does not drink beer, but
I
LJ.
drink Mike's Hard. I've had some Mike's Hard. I don't
It's so
care.
weird when you look at an offensive lineman like LJ. The last thing
I
you
hate
assume.
beer, by the way. Beer's disgusting. I'd much rather take a shot or something, but yeah, I don't do beer.
And then again, I do not drink. I typically just drive our hosts home. That is usually the gimmick. But now that we're doing this over Skype, this is all fucked up and weird. But we're going to roll that right into one of our fan base and listeners' favorite bits. It's the Lane Johnson's Groundhog advice column. Now, I apologize. We have not actually advertised this show to go out, so we are not actually providing you guys with advice typically, and for all 3 of you, since this is your first time on this show, normally our listeners will email in advice bits that they actually want. We've had a lot of hilarious advice bits. We had a guy who was writing in every single week who wanted other stuff. It was bizarre. It was unsettling at very many times, but it was fun and entertaining. But since we did not advertise this show yet, we are going to actually just give advice to random bits of the Philadelphia Eagles organization as a whole. And I'm going to allow the guys to kind of choose with whom they want to give that advice to. So, Andrew, I'm going to start with you. I texted you guys over 4 or 5 different things that you can roll with. So why don't you go ahead and tell us who you were going to provide your advice to?
I'm gonna go with the fans to start off because, as you mentioned earlier, Shane, we're a city of overreaction. So I'm gonna start with that, and I say just be patient. I know it's not what everybody wanted, but I think I know even the easiest pick there was Justin Jefferson. Everyone wanted, but I think Jalen Reagor can come in here and do a lot for this offense. I think that it's been mentioned, the speed. I think it's gonna come in and do wonders for this team. Again, I know it's not what we wanted, but if something I forgot about as well is if you look back to what's happened in the beginning of the offseason, the way they kind of built the defense and built that up from the Darius Slay to the couple linebackers they signed. I know not the biggest names, but just depth they got. And I think even with the draft, I just think it's an offseason of patience. I think that's the biggest word to kind of think about here because I think it can turn out to be just fine when it comes to the season. I think the speed is really going to help this team go far this year.
Well, we all have nothing but time, and I don't know if that's making things better or worse for all of us as we sit at home and do nothing but twiddle our thumbs and evaluate the people who do still have jobs. Howie, who maybe shouldn't. We're not sure yet. We'll give some time to that one. Sean, if you're going to give some advice to any of the categories that we had submitted over in that text, who are you giving advice to?
I want to second Andrews first off and say, as an optimistic sports fan, give this time. I immediately blew up about the first 2 rounds picks, and I said I'm sick of hearing these, just wait and see. And then I said give me somebody in the second round that I don't have to wait and see, that I don't have to look up tape of, that I know is going to be good. And I ate my words because we took Jalen Hurts. So I'm seconding that optimistic. Just give it some time because I've sort of started to come around on it. But I'd like to give my advice to Howie, Doug, and the rest of the front office and say stop trying to justify your moves. Stop trying to come up with reasons as to what you did. Come out and you don't really have to explain yourself. Just say trust the process with this. I mean, Philly fans love it. But
LJ's going to slap the hell out of you.
if you do what you did, you come out and you try and give all these reasons why you did what you did, and all these justifications, you end up with a quote like we're creating a quarterback factory, which is the second biggest Philadelphia, or it's the biggest Philadelphia taken out of context quote since
If we
Stupid
do,
Money.
we don't.
Well, no, Stupid Money, I'm gonna say, with John Middleton. Well, yeah, that was pretty bad. But before that, John Middleton saying we're gonna spend some money and maybe be a little stupid about it. That is still quoted today. So.
Well, I like that. The less is more approach. And if you're going to sit down with an attorney at any single time or a PR team, they're going to sit there and tell you anything and everything that you say will be taken or spun out of context or misreported because it is someone else's job to make you look ridiculous and sell their stories. Less is more in this particular facet. And I do believe that That's probably the best advice somebody could have given those guys, is to just shut the hell up and allow the picks to talk for themselves. Unfortunately, we live in a world that is not exactly reasonable, but I do think they put their foot in their mouths with several of those quotes. So, LJ, I'm going to roll to you last here. Your last bit of advice that you would give to any of the people or things that are in that group text. And if LJ comes up with something brilliant here, it's pretty impressive because I just texted these to him like 15 minutes ago.
Let's see. I was going to do the Howie thing, but I'm going to do the two Jalen's. But first, I'm glad they took Rager over Justin Jefferson. I wasn't a Justin Jefferson fan. He's primarily a slot receiver. He had over 100 catches last year. Yeah, he's Jordan Matthews, just a little faster. So I'm glad that they didn't take Jefferson. I'm not a Jefferson fan. The same, and when you're talking about Howie, Doug, and them, just again, don't listen to the outside chatter. Just believe what you did was correct. But I'm going to go through the two Jalen's. Don't listen to what Eagles fans say, because we talk a lot, and we talk a lot, and it's not always positive. If you go out there and you play your game and you help us win games and you eventually help us win a championship, we're not going to remember when you got drafted or why you got drafted, or we don't care, because we win games. So if we get 2025 or 2026 and Jalen Hurts for some reason or another is the starting quarterback of the Eagles, and we go to a Super Bowl with Jalen Hurts and win it, are we going to care that he got drafted in the second round in 2020? No, because we're going to be celebrating on Broad Street. So who the hell cares? Don't listen to the outside world. Jalen Hurts is the perfect example of this too, for what he went through with Bama. Going from being the starter to backing up Tua. He didn't transfer. His junior year, he didn't leave Alabama and Nick Saban hanging dry. He went about his going to class and getting his degree to graduate, and when he was called upon, he went out there and won the SEC championship game. Like, he's going to fit in perfect, because he's not looking to come in to be the starter right away. He knows that he has things that he needs to improve upon, and he's with the perfect coach to do that, because I think Doug Peterson's going to get the best out of him. And when it comes to Jalen Reagor, if you catch a 50-yard bomb week 1 against whoever we're playing, we're going to cheer you. We're not going to care that we didn't trade up for CeeDee Lamb, or that we didn't take Justin Jefferson, or whatever. If you go out there and just play your game and be productive, we're going to love you. So do not listen to the outside chatter of the fans. We're going to be positive. We're going to be negative, but we're going to love you if you go out there and produce for us.
Yeah, I'm going to second that one on the two Jalen's. It isn't either of them that we're angry with or that we were frustrated with in the moment. We weren't sitting there saying that, Jalen Reagor is not, a talent that we would like. It's just wasn't the guy that we wanted in that position, and things really played out not so awesome. Some people believe like Andrew believe and think that had CD went anywhere other than Dallas, maybe we wouldn't have been quite as harsh on the Reagor pick.
He's right.
Oh God, you people.
Thank you.
100%. I seconded it right away.
I'm on an island here saying it didn't matter. But it wasn't either of the two individuals that were selected that we had issues with. It was where we took them, or how they felt to us, or how they, again, their process in becoming Philadelphia Eagles. But just as LJ said, man, if you're going out there and you're balling out on Sundays and you're contributing in whatever way the organization calls upon you to do so, we're not going to care. It is not going to matter. We're not going to sit there and say you shouldn't have been a fucking Eagle, because if you're winning on Sunday and you're winning in February, we fucking love you. And that's pretty much the way it goes here in this city.
By that time, it might be March, because we'll be at like 20 games.
That's true. It's going to be ridiculous. But again, if you guys have listened to this show before, and you're probably hopping on to a new download link and not our old download link, so you may be first-time listeners as well. Ordinarily, you guys would be sending in advice to us, and we would be providing that advice to you. Sometimes it's fantasy, sometimes it's betting, sometimes it's life. We never really know, but we answer anything that comes in. It does not matter. This bit was actually created out of a WIP interview with Lane Johnson last year in last offseason. They had asked him, how he was spending his time in his summer, and he had said that he hated where he was at because there was a groundhog that was underneath his shed, and he couldn't find it, he couldn't kill it, he couldn't get rid of it, and his neighbors he didn't think would take kindly to him walking out there with a gun and just shooting and shooting and shooting. We found it to be hilarious, so we created it into this bit of advice, because he had asked all of the listeners on WIP if they had any ideas as to how the hell to get rid of a groundhog, and I found that massively funny. So we're going to roll into the final little bit here. We had talked a little bit about it. We had led into it with the Packers mishaps and the way that they had drafted. We're going to talk just a little bit more about around the league at this point. Sean, you had mentioned from the start that you had felt like this Packers draft was pretty damn bad. So why don't you expand upon that a little bit and anything else you may have from around the league?
Yeah, so I actually follow, I don't know why, but I follow a couple Packers fans on Twitter, and
Brian Michaels Jacobs or whatever.
I think it's him.
Yes.
Yeah.
Fucking guy.
And I don't remember when I followed him, but I saw him tweeting about the Packers and how excited he was that they traded up or in the first round. I believe they traded up in the first round for Jordan
Yeah, they
Love.
did.
Okay, yeah. And he was like, "Oh my God, we're gonna get our wide receiver," and then they picked a quarterback, and that cracked me up. And then it became, because I truly beyond Devontae Adams and Lazard and whoever else they signed in free agency, they got nobody up there. They have no depth.
Hey, they got Devin Funches.
Oh, that's true, yeah. But I mean, for whatever reason, their GM thought, I don't even know who it is, but he thought that they were fine on the wide receiver front. So they went 7 rounds without drafting wide receiver. And to me, that warrants, overall they lost the draft like by far, if not the Eagles, but I think they had a great third day. And yeah, that's pretty much the gist of that.
Aaron Rodgers, man, what he's had to go through in his life. The man sits most of the first part of his career, isn't overly loved immediately, coming in there after an all-time great in Favre. Loses his family, he's about to lose his job, and let's not all forget, the most important thing he lost in his life was Olivia Munn, who was a total goddamn babe. That really sucks. To be Aaron Rodgers, who would have thunk that would have sucked? And it does. They got him no receiver help, and he's Olivia Munnless. And it's not a shot against Danica Patrick. She's just not Olivia Munn. LJ, you had agreed with Sean earlier in terms of the Packers. If you have anything further on the Packers or anyone else that you were kind of surprised about, go for it.
I'll pick a different team, but yeah, the Packers definitely had probably the worst draft. Also, imagine how Eagles fans would have reacted if we took a quarterback in the first round this year. Obviously,
same way that we reacted in the second.
I know, but it would have been a lot worse. I mean, granted, Rodgers is 10 years older than Carson, so it didn't make sense.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna go with Oakland because first they took, as much as I'm a Henry Ruggs fan, he was the third of the top 3 receivers, and they took him with the 11th pick or wherever they were. But their draft, they went with a bunch of Clemson guys because they love Clemson. They drafted Tyler Muse and whatnot, and then did they draft 3 or 4 receivers? They were doing what Al Davis loves, and that's speed, and not really worrying about other facets of the team. So the Raiders didn't really have the Las Vegas Raiders.
What did we do?
Well, we don't have. We're built well
curious.
though. We're built well though. Our team is actually we're a playoff team. We had 0 speed last year and still somehow made the playoffs with 8 practice squad guys on offense. So we're actually coached, and John Gruden's probably the biggest waste of $100 million. Just saying. But they are going to Vegas, and that's in that stadium. Actually, I think the Eagles go to Vegas either next year or the year after. So yeah, we might be taking a trip out to Vegas, Shane. Just saying.
Yeah, man, I'm in. We know Rob's in too. Rob's always down for Vegas. We've just discussed this on another podcast about how bad I would be in Vegas, but I actually believe that you might be equally as poor in Vegas, LJ, because you don't drink, you don't gamble.
I gamble.
Not much anyway. All right. So you and I would probably sit down at a poker table and then forget everyone else that was there with us.
Until the Eagles game, yes.
Yeah, that's exactly right. All right.
It's cheap to get to Vegas too, if I'm not mistaken. So we really might need to do
this. Of course it is, man. Yeah. Hey, I'm all for it, man. I am 100% for it. And Eagles fans travel well, so that's going to be nothing but Eagles fans there. It'll basically be a home game.
Oh yeah.
All right, Angel, let's go to you. A team that surprised you, a move that surprised you, or something that was just of any type of interest in the remainder of the NFL's draft.
I'm torn between 2. I'm going to go with the Chicago Bears and their pick to get the tight end out of Notre Dame.
They have 10 tight ends.
Yeah, I don't know. That's what I was going to say. They had 9 other tight ends on the roster, and they decided to use a very high pick on a tight end, which I think some people thought of a stretch for that guy to go that early anyway, too. So on top of that, but to add a 10th tight end to your roster just seems a little head-scratching to me.
Aren't they paying Jimmy Graham $11 million this year?
Yes, that too. They signed Jimmy Graham right before the draft.
Yeah, that's absurd.
That's Ryan Pace for you.
But so basically, they cut Trey Burton to get that open spot to draft a tight end.
10. That's ridiculous. 10 tight ends, and I don't even think, because Chase Claypool also played on Notre Dame, and I don't think he's going to be a receiver in the NFL. I think he's going to be more of a tight end. And I think he's better than the guy they drafted. So yeah, they didn't really have a good draft.
Yeah, I agree with that.
That's fair. All right, so let's stick in division here, just for our last take around the NFL. We're going to stick just in our division here. Who do you see as the biggest threat after this draft? And I'm going to start with L.
Well, I mean, it's still a 2-team division. It's the Eagles and the Cowboys. The Giants and the Redskins are improved because they don't have Jay Gruden as a coach, and Ron Rivera is an actually good coach. But while they have Daniel Snyder, I don't think they're going to win anything. And Dwayne Haskins is an awful quarterback. So if I were them, while Chase Young is really good, I'd have drafted Tua number 2. I'd have taken Tua.
Not me. Chase Young's the best player in this draft.
And you're not going to win without having a good quarterback in the NFL. You can't win a championship without a good quarterback. Dwayne Haskins is awful. He's not going to win anything. When it comes to the Giants,
that's not true. We won one with a barely average quarterback who just got hot for 3 weeks.
He's better than Dwayne Haskins.
Well, everyone's better than Dwayne Haskins, but I'm just saying, like, logically speaking, there have been quarterbacks who won that had no business being there.
I get it, but Dwayne Haskins isn't leading them anywhere.
McCoy, baby. Hook 'em horns. He's not even there anymore.
Isn't he on the Giants?
Yeah, he's not there.
Is he a Giant now? I think. I forget what team he's on.
Possibly.
But when it comes to the Giants, again, Joe Judge is their coach. I don't know what he's going to do. He is a Nick Saban and a Bill Belichick disciple. So obviously coaches that try to be Nick Saban or try to be Bill Belichick, that doesn't fare really well. And I don't trust Daniel Jones and Saquon Barkley. They've ridden him so hard in the first 2 years. He got hurt, tried to come back early. Their offensive line, they drafted 2 tackles. Andrew Thomas will probably start for them right away, but that's because their offensive line is trash. They're moving from a 3-4 to a 4-3, if I'm not mistaken, or vice versa, whatever it is. I like Xavier McKinney a lot. Again, being a Bama fan, he'll be all over the field, but hopefully he doesn't do much for them. But it's going to come down to the Eagles and the Cowboys. And I think, and I mentioned it earlier, that with the circumstances that are surrounded, with not having, face-to-face or everybody at the training facility, the Eagles have continuity. They have the same coaching staff. They have the same scheme. Your entire team doesn't need to learn an entire new scheme. So the Eagles have an advantage there. I don't know if that's going to play out on the field, but like right now, the Eagles and then the Cowboys are literally right there under them, and then the Giants and the Redskins are further down.
That's fair. Either you guys have anything different in Sean or Andrew?
I'd definitely say the Cowboys are our biggest competition, and what scares me more is I think they had probably one of, if not the best drafts in the NFL this year. So that scares me even more for this upcoming year. But I do think the Eagles, all said and done, will probably win the division.
Yeah, they're too. Go ahead. Sorry.
I'm just gonna have to agree with that. Third, it really. I had them as the team that won the draft. Like we talked about the Packers and the Cowboys, and they were the 2 that I had picked out of all of them. But I just think the way they drafted was smart, even though they didn't target defense with their first pick. They went after another receiver, which they didn't really need. But I think the fact that it was so close last year, and now they get a new head coach, if it is just not even an upgrade over Jason Garrett, whatever you want to say about Mike McCarthy, but I do think that they're, if not ahead of the Eagles, they're right on their tail.
Yeah, I 100% agree with all you guys. So we're gonna go towards the wrapping up of this particular pod. We always do a rate the drink portion, so we're gonna add a little caveat to that just for tonight. Now that the draft is concluded, we've had a little bit of time to sit here and let it all sink in. We're trying to talk ourselves into believing in the philosophy of these picks and how it's all going to play out on Sundays, and thinking that it's all going to work. So we're going to ask you guys to give your grade of the Philadelphia Eagles draft, and then your drink of choice as to how you're going to cope with that. Is it a celebratory drink, or is it something that's just going to knock your ass out and get you to football season? So I'm going to start with Andrew on this one. What is your grade and then your drink of choice?
For my grade, I'm going to go C+. Just everything mentioned earlier, but from all the negatives we hit, the question mark of some picks, and then my drink of choice is I'd have to go kind of, since C+ isn't that good, I'd just say get me to hold over till football season, and I'll go with something different than beer. I'm gonna go with a 7-7.
You're gonna go with? What did you say?
I'm gonna drink 7-7. The
All right.
victory.
So I'm gonna save my grades on the drinks for the end here, because I'm gonna pin these up against each other. They're gonna be completely different this time. So Sean, I'm gonna roll to you your grade and then your drink of choice.
I was actually going to say a C+. I think, they did what they needed to do, just not in the fashion that they needed to do it. I was going to say C+. I'm actually going to drop that to a C. I just think the Hurts pick, I mean, Rager was good. He wasn't one of the top 3 that, everybody wanted, but, taking a quarterback in the second round and then not picking again until past pick 100 really hurt them. And it doesn't matter how good their day 3 draft was, there's a chance that none of those picks work out. I am proud of Howie for turning 7 or 8 picks into 10 total, plus a wide receiver. But, it doesn't take away from the fact that you screwed up day 1 and 2. So I give him a C. And I was going to stick with the hams, but since Andrew went away from it, I spent my 21st down in Tennessee with my aunt. We went to a place called Gatlinburg. And they have a lot of moonshine tasting. And my aunt said for my birthday, the one thing that what she's going to get me for my birthday while we're out tasting moonshine, she's going to buy me a bottle of whatever I wanted on this venture that we went. And so they had a new flavor that they just got that year called Dewdrop, and it was Mountain Dew flavored moonshine. So that is my drink of choice.
Oh, that sounds horrible.
Oh, it was fantastic, I promise you.
All right, LJ, I'm going to go to you. Your grade for the draft and then your drink of choice.
My grade's a B. I think, again, I'm taking everything. I'm taking a step back from the first 2 days and going over the totality of the draft, and that's including Marquise Goodwin. That can also include Darius Slay because we did trade a 3rd and a 5th for him. And again, I do think that it might not be this year, but Hurts is going to contribute. Maybe he will be like a Taysom Hill type. He'll just provide a different dynamic on the football field when he goes out there. So I think Howie did well. He got speed. He got a couple DBs, a couple offensive linemen to provide depth. So taking a step back after being angry, or not angry, but puzzled the first 2 days. I'm gonna give him a B. A drink. This is hard for somebody that doesn't drink.
I know, right? But I'm putting you on the spot, man.
Well, I'm gonna do a shot. Let me get like a cinnamon toast crunch shot. That thing is really good, by the way. And you don't.
Fuck?
Yeah, so they have a cinnamon toast.
It's so good.
Is that see?
I've never had.
It tastes just like cinnamon toast crunch, and like you could probably throw a couple of them back before you start feeling it. But yeah, because I was like, again, a B. I'm fine with it. I'm fine with it. And obviously, we'll see what happens down the road and with the players. But Howie did all right in my books after taking a step back.
A cinnamon toast crunch shot is rum chata mixed with Fireball, by the way. It's fantastic.
All right. So we have a 7-7. We have a Dewdrop, a moonshine, and then we have a cinnamon toast shot. That's wow. So all right. So here, this is how we're gonna go with this. So LJ, because this to me that does scream celebratory, because I know as a Ute, as a kid, Cinnamon Toast Crunch is a fantastic fucking cereal. And a B, like Cinnamon Toast Crunch, it's not like breakfast, but it's satisfying. I would assume that the shot is similar to that. So this is like semi-celebratory, but it's definitely could do better.
It's like drinking the milk after you eat the cereal. That's what it tastes like.
Okay. All right. Well, that bumped you up another 0.3% on me. I had you down at 8.3. I got you at an 8.6 on this now, because it makes sense. Your drink selection makes sense. Sean, unfortunately, man, your drink sounds weird as hell. I don't know why you want to just fuck with moonshine to begin with. And then you have that, to me sounds celebratory. Like you're saying this is the best drink that you've had?
The best moonshine that I had on my moonshine tour.
On your moonshine tour. So that doesn't exactly match your C of a grade there. So that's still
moonshine. Keep that in mind.
It's a 4.7 because it's moonshine, but that's tough. That's a generous 4.7. And then a 7 and a 7, that pretty much to me screams C+. So I'm gonna stick with my originally written down 5.8 for Andrews here. So the 7-7 gets the 5.8, the Dewdrop gets the 4.7, and then the fucking Cinnamon Toast Crunch Shot gets the 8.6 and wins the drink of the evening for tonight. This is Backyard Beers and Football. This is going to be probably for the off-season twice a month show is what we're going to end up working with. But it has been great getting everyone back behind the mic. It has been interesting talking football because I don't know how much pleasure this brought me tonight. But we got something to talk about. We have some kind of sports to talk about. We have something relevant. We're not just sitting here rewatching games on NFL League Pass. We're not rewatching NBA hard classics. We had something legitimate to talk about, and for that, I'm grateful. I'm going to start this one with LJ real quick to give a sign off because I want him to advertise his show because it's fantastic and let everyone know where we can find you on Twitter and your show and co-host on Twitter as well.
So I'm the co-host with Connor Donald of the Kelly Green Hour. You can reach us on Twitter at Kelly Green Hour. Connor can be reached at Connor10, that's Connor TEN. And I can be reached on Twitter at LJ Harrell54, the number 54 at the end. We put out our full first round mock draft last week, and then we did an Eagles 7-round mock draft. And probably this week we'll do a wrap up of the draft, and then once things start opening up for camps and training camp and all that, we're going to get more consistent with getting some shows out. But yeah, follow us on Twitter. Again, that's at Kelly Green Hour, and then I'm at LJ Harrell 54.
All right, and then Sean and Andrew are two of my co-hosts that are going to be new full-time on this one as well. They are with us on the newly named CTP pod. So, Sean, where can we get you?
You can find me at SeanNew27, SeanNew27, and you can follow our other podcast, the CTP Chasing the Pennant podcast at ANYP Phillies.
And then, Andrew, you do 48 different podcasts, so the fact that we're giving you another link to remember is pretty fucking impressive. I'm going to start creating different content, I'm going to create like a Monopoly one, like just hardcore table game of Monopoly, and I'm going to make you talk about it and add that link to it. So where can we find all your shit?
That sounds good. I'm always down to talk some Monopoly and play some Monopoly. Anyway, my personal Twitter is AJ_Santangelo, and then another podcast is at True Philly Sport, and then at Philly Sports Now, and then finally at Pub Sports Radio.
So many.
Hey, never get talk too much sports.
It's ridiculous. Our two mainstays on the show who are not on tonight is Rob, who hosts DOE. Rob, you can get at radio_Rob, and then Schmitty, Steve Whiskey Schmitty, is typically on this one as well, a resident Chiefs fan and host of the Whiskey Ramble pod. He is at Schmitty324. Definitely give him a follow as well. We will eventually get back to recording Whiskey Ramble pods, except when there is nothing to do but drink whiskey. He's either too far gone or legitimately dead. So we're worried about Steve, so we're hoping you're doing okay, sir. But we'll get him back on this show as well. You can find me, the host of this, and a co-host. There we go. See, I fuck it up every time. That's why it's funny in the beginning. So call back, not on purpose. But you can find me on Twitter. It's at Shane_Mead. And then definitely do yourselves a favor. Since we do crack beers for these shows, we do rate drinks. We do talk about food often on this show. What you're going to want to do is you're going to want to call Just Food. It's 215-794-FOOD. It's 215-794-3663. Treat yourself. Take it home. They have takeout for you right now. You can also go to their stores, pick up whatever you need, curbside pickup. They have one in Buckingham Green. They also have another one in New Britain, PA. But you can also have me as your bartender for your weddings and special events. I bartend for them for their catering service. So if you would like me to make the drinks that we talk about on the show, serve them to you, and then tell you how bad your sports takes are, I will be glad to do so. And you will only be able to do this if you book me and book Just Food. It's Just Food, 215-794-FOOD. Treat yourself. Take it home. Guys, it's been fun. This was an hour and 14-minute opening show, which I think, had you told me that we had 4 or 5 of us on tonight, we had kept it under 2 hours, I'd have been fucking shocked. I thought we were going to rant more. But it has been fun, and I'll see some of you guys later on CTP. Other than that, we'll be back next 2 weeks with another episode here for Backyard Beers and Football.